Hi, listener. This is From Ideology to Unity, a spiritual journey where we let go of ego and ideological doctrine in favor of meaning, purpose, and unity as a whole. So I'm doing another reading, and this is Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching, the second episode. And at least the second episode I'm recording. The book isn't in episodes. So last time, a large section of what we was doing was the introduction, which actually had some interesting things in it. So this is published by Penguin Classics, Penguin Books. Right. Okay. So now we're done with that, and we've started. I think we did the first 2 pages of the actual text. Okay, so will I go straight on with the third section, or? I think so. I think I've dealt with the first 2 pages. All right, so not to honor men of worth will keep the people from contention. Not to value goods which are hard to come by will keep them from theft. Not to display what is desirable will keep them from being unsettled of mind. Therefore, in governing the people, the sage empties their minds but fills their bellies, weakens their wills but strengthens their bones. He always keeps them innocent of knowledge and free from desire, and ensures that the clever never dare to act. Do that which consists in taking no action, and order will prevail. So, now obviously, this seems to be describing the policy of an ancient kingdom and how it could conduct itself. At least on the face value, that seems to be what it's describing. So it seems to be that it's describing what the ego wants, basically, or ways in which certain temptations, say, lead people astray when it comes to ego. And it's saying, keep those influences away from people. No, I'm not agreeing with that. I'm just simply saying that is the point seems to be. So contention isn't talking about being content. It's talking about conflict, right? Right. And people stay away from that if they don't value goods that are hard to come by. So I suppose there's a sort of materialism of seeking the scarce that will unsettle the mind. But it's interesting because the idea of scarcity is very much how the ego functions. And an open heart society wouldn't be a scarce one. It would, in a sense, be a post-scarcity society, which I'm sure the people, fans of the Venus Project, would love, wouldn't they? But it's interesting that, as a digression, I guess, while I'm not at all convinced in 3D or in 3D density that anarchy can work, that a stateless society can work, because of the nature of the frequency of the people themselves, leading to people not really being able to effectively govern themselves in the same sense. And even any government system is going to be flawed and eventually get corrupted just because of service to self people, then there's like their schemes that they tend to make, and simply the nature of the density where there's lower frequency and egos are very much something to contend with. But now we're at a point where technically Earth is fourth density, right? Or in 5D. It's just humanity had to sort of catch up in a sense. Now, some of us are obviously raising our frequency ahead of others, but we're at a point now where it is actually feasible. Now, I'm not going to denigrate anyone who is like into anarchy, right? Like, I'm not going to say, okay, you're wrong, it doesn't make sense. It's just a personally, I was into the idea of a state of society at one point. Then I went off it because I thought that inevitably there'd be a state. But now I'm in this idea of there's awakening, we're moving to 5D. Suddenly, I'm aware of the idea that certain things that wouldn't be feasible otherwise are actually feasible now. And I know it's a tangent, but that's just how I roll. So, in a way, what he's describing sounds a bit like minarchy, or like a small, relatively small state that does. But at the same time, it's talking about people not being okay, right. So the start of it is that when you have men of good worth, you honor them, right? So it's some degree of meritocracy, right? And rewarding those who are affected. First of all, that's not corrupt, particularly, is it? That's generally pretty good. And that, if you do that, then you keep the people from contention. That doesn't mean people, yeah. So then people aren't in conflict and egoic competition as much, although that's always going to happen to some extent in diversity. But we're moving past that anyway. Not valuing goods that are hard to come by. Well, why would that result from people, men of worth, being honored? Because they would have a place in the order of things, in the hierarchy, the power structure, or whatever. They wouldn't be causing trouble for, let's say, the empire. Now, keep in mind, this is very much in a Chinese context. And so that's the idea of a Chinese empire. It's kind of the context to understand the origin of these ideas. Now, these ideas would have actually developed in probably the Three Kingdoms era or slightly before in China, which is actually a very interesting period of China. And you actually get these different philosophies discussed in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, actually. I'm not sure where Taoism fits, into which thinkers are the more Taoist ones, but it does have a bias. Anyway, I'm not gonna, that would be too many tangents of tangents, so I'm not going to get into the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, all right? So anyway, so that's interesting. But this other idea, and this is when it's describing it's like this kingdom, what if the kingdom it's describing, or these policies it's describing, what if you could apply that as a metaphor for our relationship with our own mind, right? So if we honor men of worth, and if we honor aspects of ourselves that are worthy, people won't be in so much conflict. Well, maybe. It's a bit tenuous, that one. But certainly not overly valuing the hard to come by and being more content with what you have, being more humble. That's certainly good advice. And if you look at it in this angle. In governing the people, or your own mind, the sage empties their minds, or your mind, but fills their bellies. So it's something with the chakras. It makes you think of, well, you can't really open your heart if your root chakras, if your root chakra is blocked, if your fundamental survival is blocked, everything else is like out the window. So if people go hungry, they rebel, right? And if you don't have your basic needs fulfilled, you wait out, right? And you're on the survival mode more. I mean, it's worth considering that prior to the French Revolution, there was a great shortage of food, right? There's a direct correlation between rebellions and famines. Direct, like there's a very strong correlation historically. So when it comes to issues of survival, it's like issues that relate to root chakra are actually very important. That's the red ray chakra, the bottom one. So it's around between your legs, basically. So there is a point there. You want to make sure people's basic needs are provided for, whether it's just talking about governing a kingdom or just talking about governing yourself. Same difference, because the law of correspondence says, as above, so below, as below, so above, right? What does it mean by weakening their wills? I don't know. I don't agree with the idea of weakening the people's will, but maybe in the context here, it's talking about willfulness or people being overly like focusing on their own egoic desires over others. I don't know. So it's innocent of knowledge. Well, certainly wisdom is more important than knowledge, and knowledge can be, if you're not ready for knowledge, if you don't really, the ego can use knowledge against you, right? Or against others. And people often gain knowledge so that they can increase their position in social hierarchy. Hey, look at me, I'm so clever, I know all these things. I'm probably not immune from that. Anyway, the clever never dare to act. I mean, obviously, if you look at this in the context of it when it was written, the social order being disturbed would lead to conflict and violence and death and suffering. So this is the context of, well, just have the status quo and the clever people just stop daring to act so that they just keep in line, then everything's better. I don't believe that, but you could look at it in terms of the perspective of the times. And keep in mind that it's hard to pen down everything that Lao Tzu said or other people have said, and because they're put in these texts, they're kind of collected together. But as the person in the introduction said, it's hard to exactly tell what Lao Tzu said and what isn't. And so we need to take it more as a whole than each individual thing as the be all and end all. Oh dear, right. But if you look at it on an individual level, well, if you focus on the fundamentals first over the advanced, if you focus on your fundamental basic needs, don't focus overly on knowledge, be humble and these things, that would be good advice. And I don't think that there's no reason not to apply it in this more symbolic sense to the mind. I don't see why there wouldn't be symbolism in this. Do that which consists in taking no action and order will prevail. Well, that applies to your own mind, right? Don't be a tryhard in life. It doesn't really work out for you. You also don't want to just not do anything and laze around or be a stimulation junkie. But if you're doing that, you're doing too much, right? It's just that what you're doing is It's this interesting way people think about things, where they're like, okay, so if you're not working, you're not doing anything. But if you're watching a bunch of YouTube videos, if you're playing a computer game, or you're taking a whole load of drugs, or whatever, you're doing things. You're doing quite a lot of things. And it's not inaction, it's just, you could say malaction, but that's a judgment. The point is, if you're taking no action, so to speak, then order will prevail. But is this saying just sit there doing nothing? No. I interpret this as not forced action, but rather what comes naturally. Being present, being in the moment, that is where order prevails. And what does it mean by order here? Well, interestingly, often we think of, what was it? What's that symbol of, like the Taoist symbol? Yin and Yang, and then there's just the way behind it, this wavy line between it, right? Chaos and order is generally how we associate it. And it is interesting, obviously, that the line between chaos and order is like a wave, you know, like vibration and frequency. And the whole thing is round the edge, that's an Ouroboros representing infinity. And obviously you get two opposite colors, but each one has the opposite color inside of it, which means that even if one of them takes over, inside of it is the roots of its opposite. So there's a lot of symbolism in that basic yin yang symbol. It represents all of infinity. The circle is a monad, but it also represents duality, and also represents unity, duality, and perhaps a trinary of the one and the one divided into two. And even there's two more, because there's the one, then there's two more, but each side has its opposite inside of it. So you could make that 5. I don't know. I'm just playing around numerology. Maybe there's something more that I'm seeing in that. Anyway, back to the actual text that I'm supposedly doing a reading of. So, the way is empty, yet use will not drain it. Deep it is like the ancestor of the myriad creatures. Blunt the sharpness, untangle the knots, soften the glare. Let your wheels move only along old ruts. Deeply visible, it only seems as if it were there. I know not whose son it is. It images the forefather of God. Well then, so we're talking about the way again, okay? So what is the ancestor of myriad creatures? If I remember correctly, that seems to refer to source, right? Or does it refer to the universe? I honestly can't remember, but the creator of all the created, which are the myriad creatures. Yeah, infinite source, all that is, yeah. Ancestor, not the creator, the ancestor. So is that the universe? Honestly, I don't know, but we'll skip that. But it's deep. The way is empty, yet use will not drain it. So, and the deep connects to that. So basically, it's a water that you could say represents life and consciousness, like that, like the energy or consciousness or whatever it is being poured or contained in the Aquarius, the symbol. And it's never drained, it's infinite, right? The way is infinity, or it's certainly infinite. It does not drain, It's not limited. It's not bounded. It's deep. All these different forms of creatures. It's the ancestor of that. The way is where all of the creation is derived from. It's the creator. And interestingly, as I mentioned, when I described the yin and yang and the line in between, the wavy line, it's basically, well, it's a wave, right? It's a wave. Frequency, vibration, vibrating consciousness, right? Now what happens if you get this wavy line, right? And then you have another one going the other way. And it basically, it's like, you could say it a little bit like DNA. It's not a double helix, but you know what I mean? But also, actually something I've been thinking today is, you know, when people show images of like psychedelic stuff, right? And they show these eyes, right? Think about the shape of an eye and think about these waves. If you get two waves opposite each other, kind of into spiraling together, let's say, or what you get is an eye shape. It's like a sine curve, maybe. Well, it's a mathematical shape, but it's also, the eye is based on that mathematical shape, and it has fundamentally to do with vibration, frequency, which also is linked to consciousness, which is also linked to the way between chaos and order, the way that we're discussing. Anyway, blunt to sharpness. Well, maybe, I wonder if they're going to say sharpen the bluntness at some point, because once you reach one extreme, once it reaches one extreme, it goes to the other immediately. Not immediately, but like, it's like a cyclical back and forth between positive, negative, up and down, or whatever, right? If you got two opposites, I remember from last time I was doing a reading, if there's anything in particular that you describe it as, that doesn't really truly do it justice. And so you can kind of refer to it by putting it between, think of it as a form of triangulation or something, even though tri means three, but whatever. So you get one opposite and another opposite, and you're like, the way is between that. But you don't say, oh, just immediately halfway between, right? But it's like, it's the whole scale between the binary. It's all of the polarity as a whole, and each of every polarity as a whole, right? It's not dualistic. It's non-dualistic. It's holistic. Untangle the knots. Well, it would, maybe untangles knots. Maybe untangle the knots. I'm not sure about that one. Soften the glare. Well, it's not forced. Soften the glare, what it gives to me, this idea of it's not forced, it's this. I'm going to assume that was a fly that was behind me and not something else. Oh, it's orbs. I don't think so. Tell you what. I don't think I'm at that level to have orbs around me yet. Anyway, soften the glare. So basically, yeah, don't be a tryhard. I think that will get it across. It's effortless. It's flow, right? When you're in flow, you're not trying really hard, focusing. And a glare that face expression tends to link to being, well, trying, pushing self, like something being forced, right? it being forced. Let your wheels move only along old ruts. I'm not sure about this one. Certainly, it's easier to be in flow when it's habitual. So maybe it's referring to that. Maybe it's talking about the way is ancient or beyond ancient. It's as old as anything, right? It's the oldest. And anything you create by comparison, any ruts that you go along by comparison, any newer things can't really be at the same level as that. It's a bit like there's the creations of the demiurge can't ever match the creations of the infinite creator, right? What the ego creates isn't the same as what the infinite creator creates. And when you are on the way, you're not in the way of the way. And you are the way because, well, you are the way. So accept that you're not the way when you're not following the way. Does that make sense? Makes sense to me. I know not whose son it is. So I'm reminded on one hand of when the Course in Miracles talks about the Father and the Son being Christ and us, the Father being all that is. But I know not whose son it is. So it's not the Son. Is it the Father? But is the Father a son? In other words, is all that is all that is? And you might think, well, yeah, I mean, it's all that is, right? But what I'm referring to is the fractal nature of reality. And then it goes infinitely up, infinitely down, and infinite anything else. It images the forefather of God. The forefather of God. Like before, there's a creator of this reality, but then there's a creator of the fractal reality. And there's infinity, right? So it images the forefather of God. Yeah, that's all I've got from it for now, but that's interesting. All right, 5. Heaven and earth are ruthless and treat the myriad creatures as straw dogs. Okay, there's a footnote here to what straw dogs are. In the Yin and Yang chapter of the Chuang-Tzu, it is said that the straw dogs were treated with the greatest deference before they were used as an offering, only to be discarded and trampled upon as soon as it served their purpose. The sage is ruthless and treats the people as straw dogs. That makes me feel like, what it makes you think of is the idea that our bodies are like flesh suits. We are souls, right? Incarnated. The bodies are simply functional, right? However much the ego might not like the idea of that, that's the truth. The sage follows the way, right? You could say that, I mean, it is unnecessarily negative to say the sage is ruthless, but I suppose the negative and the positive, on one hand, are judgments. On the other hand, I mean, it is non-duality, so it has the positive and the negative within it, and yet is beyond those things. So why would it not contain ruthlessness? Why would it not contain the opposite of ruthlessness? also there's a grand design, and these egoic personalities and identities are nothing compared to the grand interconnected design that source weaves, right? And that, well, that's what comes to me, my mind. Is not the space between heaven and earth like a bellows? It is empty without being exhausted. The more it works, the more comes out. Much speech leads inevitably to silence. Better to hold fast to the void. Everything comes from the void. There's this idea, in a sense, is source conscious everything or conscious nothing? Is there a difference between those two things? In any case, the void, to me, is, because it's nothing in particular, anything can be created from that. And perhaps the void, maybe the void is the way. Is it the greatest steps of the way? Or is it the way? I don't know. But it's void of being anything in particular, which makes it everything. And, or at least that it can manifest as anything or create anything. It's eternal, it's infinite. Well, the more it works, the more comes out. Much speech lives and needs inevitably silence. Well, sound, speech, silence, these are opposites, and yet opposites are different aspects of polarity and thus are one. It is empty without being exhausted. Interesting. It's not anything in particular, so it's empty of any particularness. It's like a liquid that is a lack of anything. It sounds contradictory, but I think I get it. I don't know if you do, but imagine a void liquid that is everything, but isn't anything in particular, from which everything comes, which is the creator, which is frequency, which is vibration, which is consciousness, which is a flame or a fire or a spark. All of these things. It is source. It is infinity. It is the creator. It is you. It is me. It is us. It is unity. So, the spirit of the valley never dies. This is called the mysterious female. The gateway of the mysterious female is called the root of heaven and earth. Dimly visible, it seems as if it were there, yet use will never drain it. Spirit of the valley. So we all come into this world through the womb. Well, no, yeah, we come into the womb, and we come out of the womb through a gateway, and a gateway shaped like a valley. It's mysterious female because it doesn't really matter which female it is in this archetypal or universal sense. I mean, dimly visible because it's pretty dark in there, right? One would hope so. Use will never drain it because there's ever more beings being born in reality. The mother in a universal archetypal sense is something which is never exhausted. And so, but what is the spirit of the valley? The spirit of the woman? The spirit of the creator, in other words, the creator, in other words, the way. That's what I get from it. What is significant about the shape of a V? If you get one wave, you get another wave kind of opposite to it, symmetrically, around the point where the two waves connect, there's a valley. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. 7. Heaven and earth are enduring. The reason why heaven and earth can be enduring is that they do not give themselves a life. Hence, they are able to be long-lived. They don't give themselves a life. They're not incarnated. Maybe they are. This is talking about heaven and earth as holistic things, primordial aspects of reality. In that sense, I guess it makes sense. Therefore, the sage puts his person last and it comes first. Eternal life comes from not giving yourself life. Well, the eternal soul doesn't give itself life. It gives itself bodies, but it is the life in a sense. The body is maintained through that life force of the soul or source, right? It doesn't, and that's fundamentally, when you're in touch with that, you're in touch with the way and source, right? So it doesn't give itself life. It's a faucet that never, or it's like a container that never empties. Okay. If you make yourself limited, or if you're dwelling in limitation, then, well, you're not on the way. And this is just talking about the way. So yeah, it's unlimited. Puts his person last and it comes first. His person, his ego, comes last. Humility, right? It comes first. The way comes first. In the moment, right? Instead of having your ego follows the way. And you aren't the ego. You aren't the person. You are the way, and naturally you come first by being in tune with your unlimitedness. Treats it as extraneous to himself and is preserved. Treats the way as an extension of himself and is preserved. Diverges from the way and treats it as separate from himself is not preserved. Why? Because it is preservation and infinite. It's if the way and source of all life, not being in tune with that frequency is where decay comes from, whether it's a decaying structure in the order side of things, in an unbalanced order side of things, or it's just the entropic decay you get through chaos, unharmonic chaos. Either way, that's why if you treat yourself as limited, that's what you're going to get. And you're going to get entropy. But the way is fundamentally non-entropic. And dwelling in the way is fundamentally non-entropic. For you are the way. And if you get in the way of being in the way, then I think you get my point anyway. You are one with the way. In fact, you're one with everything. It's obviously going to be part of you. Unless, of course, you don't recognize that and you don't align with that frequency. And there's going to be consequences for that, of that. Is it not because he is without thought of self that he is able to accomplish his private ends? Wow. So it's self here is not being referred to as, it's not referring to the self of Jungian psychology, it's referring to the self in the sense of the ego. And if you don't think about yourself, you're better off, because harmony provides for you, source provides for you. When you align with it, it loves you. Why would it be any other way, right? Like, it's a lot harder for a parent to provide for you if you're fighting your parent, right? Yeah, and if you're thinking, it's kind of a trust. This is fundamentally referring to surrender to source, or surrender generally, or not, yeah, surrender to the process, trusting God, or source, or the way, or what have you, trusting that it will work out, loving unconditionally whatever happens, and trusting that it's part of the process. For every down there's an up, and every up there's a down, and it's all, well, it's all of ever-flowing, eternal, infinite river, isn't it? Yes. Highest good is like water, because water excels in benefiting the myriad creatures without contending with them, and settles where none would like to be. It comes close to the way. Well, there's no conflict between you and the myriad creatures. It doesn't contend with anything, right? It is in harmony with it. Yeah, pardon me, I was just Well, we all need life. It is we all need life, yeah. We all need water to survive, right? But that water, that energy, that consciousness, that primordial essence, it comes from that water, that infinite water. And that's the highest good. The highest good being source, and the highest good being the way. And it provides for all the creatures, including you, or at least your body. And and settles where none would like to be. It comes close to the way. Okay, so the highest good isn't the way, but it's close to it. The way is beyond the highest good. Because obviously, if we were to say the highest good, that's a particular thing. And anything in particular cannot be the way. But obviously, any description of the way cannot truly give it justice. That's well established. And so something that comes close to the way is helpful for illustrating the way, right? In a home, it is the site that matters. In quality of mind, it is depth that matters. In an ally, it is benevolence that matters. In speech, it is good faith that matters. In government, it is order that matters. In affairs, it is ability that matters. In action, it is timeliness that matters. It is because it does not contend that it is never at fault. So, the foundation, which reminds me of Meister Eckhart, actually, the foundation of, let's say, a home, that has a fundamental importance to, well, the quality of the house, right? And what is our foundation? You could say, in a sense, it's throat chakra, right? Though ultimately, the lowest chakra is the highest, and it all repeats. So, in a sense, it's source. It's all source anyway, right? What is the source, if not the infinite depths of void water which everything comes from and was created from by, or something? That makes sense to me. It is quality of mind. In quality of mind, it is depth that matters. Depth, well, think about it this way. If you're not exploring your own depths, if you're just like plastering over your depths and only dealing with what you're most conscious of, well, you don't have quality of mind. That's kind of the origin of the basis of neuroticism, right? So, neuroticism? Neurosis? Something like that. Yeah. And obviously, the way has been described as deep water, a river of infinite depth. In an ally, it is benevolence that matters. Well, it sounds like good intentions, maybe unconditional love. I'm making associations here. Good faith in speech matters. Well, honesty. Honesty is important for an open heart, right? And you can't really, it's true that you can just bypass the heart chakra to get to the throat chakra, which is just through communication. But surely you'd have better communication if you have an open heart using the throat chakra, right? And good faith, honesty, loving the truth, they're connected, right? If you don't really love the truth, you're not going to be truthful. If you're not being truthful, you don't love the truth. Or at least not as much as you could do. Or if not, or at least not unconditionally. Thus, in speech, good faith matters. In relation to the way, because this is talking about the way, in government, it is order that matters. All right, so I am curious what they mean precisely by order, because I get the impression somehow that they're not talking about the opposite of chaos. So maybe I'm putting my own preconceptions in here. Order seems to be referring to what I would think of as harmony. Order and disorder or maybe is them talking about harmony and disharmony, as opposed to, no, maybe not. Maybe order and disorder is closer to it, because harmony, no. Order and disorder is, maybe there'd be two types of disorder or disharmony. Maybe you could say solid and liquid or something. Being too loose and flowing, or being too strict. I guess it's interesting because what they're talking about as order doesn't seem to be the same thing as what we typically in the West consider to be chaos and order. So maybe there's two senses of order. There's higher order, and then there's simply order. Order that isn't harmonic is lower order, perhaps. That kind of makes sense. In terms of chain of being, that seems to be a concept that makes sense as this higher and lower order. But that means there's higher and lower chaos. But ultimately, if it's any higher chaos or higher order would ultimately be united. For if there's separation, you get duality, and with duality, you don't get the way, right? The way is the unity of opposites, right? Or at least derives from that, or involves that. I think I'm tying it together here. I think I'm tying it together. So that's how we can make sense of it. The more along the way it is, the quote higher it is. So it's almost like imagine a river in a valley, but somehow it's backwards, like the river's higher than the rest. Because this river isn't really a river. It's more like an energy stream through infinite nothingness, except that the energy stream is infinite nothingness. And what it's moving through is finite everything. That's an interesting picture to paint, and I don't know if it's truth to it, but hopefully you're getting something from it. I assure you, I'm not high. I mean, I could actually do my high. No, I'm not going to, not anytime soon anyway. Right. We can consider this podcast a diagnosis of ADHD. Maybe. Yeah. Okay, so in affairs, it's its ability that matters. Things are harmonious when the way would be, okay, suppose we choose to have certain talent, to incarnate with certain talents. It would be only natural for us to be aligning with those, right? If we have a life plan, a dharma, if we have a life plan, right? Things we are incarnated, if we've got a mission, things we're incarnated to do, to contribute, to serve, whatever, right? If we will be naturally more able in those areas that we're here to do. Otherwise, what's the point? Unless it's something you're here to do, unless part of the mission involves learning how to get good at something that it's harder to do in some way, like some sort of challenge. Otherwise, but then even then you'd have the ability required for that. And so in affairs, it is ability that matters. That is actually harmonious. In action, it is timeliness that matters, but that wouldn't mean rushing, because that would not be the way. appropriate time seems to be what's referred to here. And appropriate time would not be quick and it would not be long. It would be the time that the way aligns with whichever that may be, in alignment with that ebb and flow of the way. It is because it does not contend that it is never at fault. Right, so it's just not forced, it's not selfishly taken from others, it's not resisting, it's not fighting, it's harmonizing, right? It's aligning with the frequency of source, which, why would source not be a frequency? And why would that not be the way? So, all right, rather than fill it to the brim by keeping it upright, better to have stopped in time, hammer it to a point, and the sharpness cannot be preserved forever. There may be gold and jade to fill whole, but there is none who can keep them. To be overbearing when one has wealth and position is to bring calamity upon oneself. To retire when the task is accomplished is the way of heaven. When it says stopped in time, I don't think it's talking about pausing in time. It's more stopping when you have, at the right time, whatever that is, rather than in an intuitive way, I guess, rather than be like, I want as much as I can, right? Because that's not balanced. That's forcing it or being greedy, or that's not being harmonious with everything else, because you're trying to get as much as you can for yourself, right? But what if instead you just trust that you will get what you need, right? And suppose you don't fill your cup. Loving yourself in that sense, filling a cup is good. But like, if suppose you don't actively go out to get stuff for yourself as much as you could, trusting that what you need, you'll get. And perhaps you might get more than you could have sought out to get yourself by not seeking it out. You know, I'm definitely seeing a lot of things that we could apply in everyday life here, that it's all real and abstract talking about, but these things are applicable. So I don't think I'm the only person saying this, but there's this idea of, well, we seek pleasure, right, a lot of the time. Even people in the spiritual community, like, it's something, and it's something I'm still grappling with. So there's often a distraction of some kind or another from being in the moment. And there's a pain that comes with not being in the moment. This is something Eckhart Tolle says. And it creates a void which we seek to fill, right? And we seek to, oh, I can get more of this, more of that. It's like we're looking for abundance. Love, abundance are connected, right? So we're looking for love or abundance, same thing, outside of ourselves, right? And if we do that, we're getting as much as we can. We're glugging down all of the drink, we're eating all of the food and all of that, because we feel like we're not enough. We feel limited. We feel, well, we're not aligned with the way, right? We're not aligned with ourselves. We're aligned with, we're not aligned with infinity. We're just aligned with, well, the finite, the ego. And that's why we feel so unsettled. But if we're not, when we're not aware of that, we don't like be like, okay, I was like aligned now. You just carry on unaligning, right? But it's that surrender, that trust, and that moderation. The thing is, if you actively go out and get as much as you can, what that says is you don't have enough. Why? Because otherwise you'd be fine and hold back, right? If you're getting as much as you can, that suggests you don't have enough, which maybe has a law of attraction effect as well. So yeah, better not to fill it to the brim, right? Hammer it to a point and the sharpness cannot be preserved forever. I think this is the one with blacksmithing. And I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong or something, but is it possible that if you hammer too much, trying to get it super sharp and trying to get it perfect, you'll actually make it brittle and not last as long, right? Blacksmithing is about getting a balance, right? Makes sense. And you can be super rich, right? But if there's none who can keep them, but there is none who can keep them, right? Or if you got all by wealth and abundance, but you're overbearing with it, you act like, oh, I'm so superior because I've got all this and that. Like, well, maybe abundance comes from the way, right? And harmony. If you're being unharmonious, gathering it over yourself and just be like egotistical about it, then pride before the fall, right? Fall with an A. Although the fall would be prideful, right? Reminds me of the hero's journey. You start as a fall, prideful. Then you have your fall. Then you have the dark night of the soul. Then you look within, integrate the shadow. Gain wisdom from using the wisdom and using wisdom from the old man archetype. And female wisdom from a female you run along into as well. And you get this gift, right? Or you use that gift you were given, you look within, and then you actually overcome the obstacle and get out the dark night of the soul. But you still got improvements to make. And you keep doing that, and eventually you get to the point where you've got this great nemesis, the dragon, that you need to contend with. But now that you've integrated your shadow, you've done the inner work, you've gone within, you've alchemized, you're now in a position where cycling back around, you're able to triumph. And then you go back to where you came from, but you're changed, but you're different. Now, this cycle, in a sense, it's a circle, right? But since the way is ever moving forward, maybe backwards as well, but let's not go into that. Then what happens is this cycling process is actually a frequency up, down, up, down, up, down. And there might be an opposite up, down, which if you take it together and spin them around, what you get is a sort of, you get a spiral going up, right? Which incidentally is like the sine wave, which incidentally is like the way, and which the way on the symbol of yin yang, and all those other things are connected with it. So yeah. And that's why you get calamity when you diverge from the way, or at least to that extent. To retire when the task is accomplished is the way of heaven. You don't push yourself too hard. You don't. And it's like, another thing is, you're going to be kind to yourself. And another thing, suppose you defeat that dragon, or suppose you're midway through the journey and you get in trouble fighting that enemy or whatever, in a very loose symbolic sense. But suppose you don't quit and go back within, or you don't quit at the end of the journey when you beat the dragon. You just keep fighting, keep going. Well, you're going to spiral downwards, aren't you? or if you keep fighting, you keep making the same mistakes, there is a version of the hero's journey, the tragic one, and the tragedy is the opposite. Instead of learn the lesson, they'll do the opposite, get everything wrong. And I think that's called, I'm not the one who was saying this. I think it was, I forget it, it doesn't matter who said it. There's this film noir thing, which they tend to, everything goes wrong. I think it was David Wilcock who said it, I think, in the Synchronistic Key, which I'm reading, but yeah. Okay, so that's that. 10, when carrying on your head your perplexed bodily soul, can you embrace in your arms the one and not let go? In concentrating your breath, can you become as supple as a babe? Can you polish your mysterious mirror and leave no blemish? Can you love the people and govern the state without resorting to action? When the gates of heaven open and shut, are you capable of keeping the role of the female? When your discernment penetrates the four quarters, are you not capable of knowing anything? Oh, pardon me. Are you not capable of not knowing anything? It gives them life and rears them. It gives them life, yet claims no possession. It benefits them, yet exacts no gratitude. It is the steward, yet exercises no authority. Such is called the mysterious virtue. The mysterious virtue. It's virtuous, and yet let's not pin it down too much, because that wouldn't be the way, would it? And this mysterious virtue, carrying on your head your perplexed but bodily soul. The one, the all, the unity, aligning with the source field vibration, right? The way. You let go to do that. Or if you do that, you let go. Those things come hand in hand. But there's something interesting I came across very recently, and it was actually, now recently I'm curious, researching like a little bit about hallucinogenics. And so I can't remember the name of the name of the YouTuber. He's a prominent YouTuber who talks about his experiences and advice about taking them, right? And one of the things he was talking about is one of the main problems with people who take hallucinogenics. You know, there's talk, oh, have a good setting, all of that. But the most important thing is actually discipline. But it's not as simple as, oh, just be super structured and disciplined, right? It's more, you've got to have control of letting go. So you have control, but you're letting go control. But you're not just letting go of control in a completely uncontrolled way. It's a control that isn't an exerted control. Is it a restraint? Perhaps. It's a balanced, harmonious, integrated, holistic control. It's the control of harmony. Whereas any control that isn't harmonious is dualistic and separated, and there's a lack of control simultaneously there beneath the surface, right? Like there's ice or plastering over a wound, right? Or suppose, or something's got to a point where it's at the point of bursting out, but you're just trying to push it down. Like, no, not going to deal with it, not going to deal with it. That's seeking control of yourself, let's say, or with others, whatever. If you're seeking too much control, you won't get it, right? But control without trying, control without forcing, control that let goes, but not an uncontrolled letting go, completely just losing all coherency. What you get then would be unharmonic chaos or unharmonic disorder. And then that is destructive, right? This creative harmonic integration of chaos and order. And then there's destructive chaos while ignoring the order. And where does that come from? Well, it comes from forced order, which separates out any disorder or chaos from it in a non-harmonic way. What you get then is separation and duality and a temporary state of order that can't be sustained. It's finite. It's like, basically, to be overbearing when one has wealth and position is to bring calamity upon oneself. Better, rather than fill it to the brim by keeping it upright, better to have stopped in time. There we go. In concentrating your breath, can you become as supple as a babe? Now, this is interesting because it seems to be referring to breath work. Breath work is important. Here's the thing, actually, I've been wondering about meditation. Actually, this issue I'm grappling with. What I started doing is, I started doing it in a regular ritualistic way where it's like, I have to do my meditation, right? But if you do it that way, that's forced. That's not the way. And it's meant to be something that makes you more in touch with source or harmony or the way, right? So, that's something to keep in mind. But even if you're too particular about, in particular, following the way, that's not the way. And that applies to meditation, right? Meditation is not a ritual to follow in a religious way. Right? That would be too much in the lower order sense of things, as I defined it previously. What it is, it's something that you can, it's like you've got a belt and you've got these different tools, right? And meditation is a tool that you can use to realign when you feel that, or intuit that it can serve you to ground and realign if you feel like you're diverging. So, yeah, that's my point. I don't think that's the point being made here, but, well, concentrating on your breath can definitely help, for sure. And it can allow you to become as supple as a babe. Can you polish the mysterious mirror and leave no blemish? What is this mirror? It reminds me of the mirror effect, where the external world reflects your internal. As above, so below, as within, so without, as without, so within, right? That's the law of correspondence. The mirror effect and the law of attraction, I would say, is a side effect of that. Maybe some people say maybe the law of attraction is just one of the hermetic laws and that's just how it is. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's kind of like an emergent law from other laws. So is it a true hermetic law? I don't know. I'm digressing. But the thing is, yeah, this mysterious mirror seems fundamentally linked to the mysterious virtue. The mirror shows you the virtue. Mirror, mirror on the wall. I don't know. I just felt like saying that. So the idea is what you see is a reflection of your state, right? But if you see a distorted image, you're distorted. And it's telling you that. And that also applies to the world you see, right? Why is the world so chaotic that we're living in? Why is there so much, or at least why does it seem that way? Why does it seem like so much conflict, so much suffering, so much division? Because, well, it was there the whole time, but it's coming to the surface in this awakening. And thus, mirroring that what we see around us will look like that. But here's the thing, not necessarily. If you are just living in the countryside, being meditative and harmonic, right, it won't seem that way. And if you were asked to ask Eckhart Tolle, he might not perceive the world like that at all, even if he's walking, going from city to city, right? Because fundamentally, you might look at all of these things that one person might see as chaotic and everything falling apart and conflict and everything, division. You might see people releasing that divisive pent-up negativity and actually coming together more. You might see a divine plan playing out as a way in which a whole human collective awakens and then unites, right? You might see beyond the veil, in a sense, to what's really going on, in 4D sense or 5D sense or beyond. So, but if it, now, obviously, since I actually see chaos when I look around the world, even though I know I'm starting to get this impression that I know there's a higher plan and I'm trusting it more, I mean, I've still got more work to do. And I'm sure you just look at the world, just observe how you subjectively perceive the world, right? That tells you about your state. And that might even direct you to where inner work can be done, where the next step is in your shadow work. What's going wrong in the world? What's going wrong with you? Or wrong is not really the term to use. So go on with you. Well, you know what I mean? So like, everyone's pointing fingers at each other, right? Got a victim mentality or acting superior to others. It's not like I haven't done that. Even relatively recently, I've done that, even though I know better than that. So, and I'm seeing that outside. So that's something to work on. That's just an example. So the mirror principle is really useful. It really is. And it's not just something to talk about. It's something to practice. Yeah. So, and that is fundamentally linked to mysterious virtue. And it's a way, when you have a totally clear mirror, perhaps that is a sign that you're in line with the virtue. Or perhaps you could look closer to see if there are any blemishes after all. Anyway. But if you polish it, doing the inner work might be polishing it. Is there going to be a blemish? Maybe not. Maybe if you really polish it, but don't try too hard. Don't try too hard. You might increase the blemishes somehow. Can you love the people and govern the state without resorting to action? Governance without action. That doesn't mean literally doing nothing. Suppose we look at this in a different way. Instead of looking at this as some Chinese kingdom, let's look at this as, instead of government, let's think of governance. Let's consider how we can govern ourselves and how, if we polish our mirrors, do the inner work, the more we can do that, the more we can govern ourselves and govern together in a more harmonious way that isn't particular action, but the way, right? Flowing from one thing to the other in a harmonious way and interacting in a harmonious way, okay? And that may involve something like exchange of some kind, but it wouldn't be like greedy exchange. Oh, let's see how I can get as much as I can, right? But it wouldn't be either, oh no, we can't have a market of any kind. We can't have trade and exchange. We need to share everything and order it completely. Both of these things wouldn't be the way. I'm just getting the sense of, even though we're going to get a social memory complex ultimately, we'll be Gaia, essentially. We already are, in a sense. Or whatever the word is. All of Earth, all of humanity, including the planet herself, being one, okay? But while still being sovereign individual souls, okay? And still governing ourselves. And as also considered, there's a transition into that, okay? Or, okay, suppose there's some sort of commune or whatever, and I don't mean communism, but whatever. So what I'm suggesting as a digression, but I think it's linked, is, in my personal opinion, just because we want to be working together and coming together as a whole, just because we want unity, it doesn't mean we have to do away with the market, right? That doesn't mean having all these corporations and stuff. That's capitalism, or whatever you call it, right? But the market, that's just simply people swapping stuff and exchanging stuff. Or we might say, why have trade? Because if you have trade, that implies property, and one person has something separate from what other people have, and that creates a problem. But maybe it's, would there really not be any proxy property? Not de jure, like, but de facto, for a time being, until you give it to someone else. And this can be a gift economy. It could be, and whether that gift economy has a medium of exchange just to smooth it all out, I don't know. But fundamentally, people would be dwelling in love. So yeah, and we're in a position to transition to more towards that. So people starting to do things themselves, more themselves, following the way, instead of the certainly not harmonious corporate and state, the road, the path that the state corporate complex has in mind for us, with all its Orwellian features, with, say, stadiums actually being internment camps, or at least preparation for that, stuff like that. Well, actually, I honestly only said that because I read something in Synchronicity by David Wilcock that was the intention. Like, he channeled that from his higher self or something. Yeah, okay, a tangent within a tangent. I've got this sort of Russian dolls of tangents, fractal tangents. All right, so hopefully I can find where I was. When the gates of heaven open and shut, are you capable of keeping to the role of the female? The creator? It's keeping in touch with the female side. It's certainly important. In Gnosticism, Sophia is supposed to be, is it the word of God? I think it's the word of God, or the word of the creator. And she came into the reality, but was impregnated with the universe, or one of the primordial archons or something, I don't know. And then from that, you got all the forms, the lower forms. That's one side of it. That's one way of looking at it. It's a bit pessimistic, to be honest. In many ways, I actually prefer the law of one to Gnosticism, just because Gnosticism seems a bit pessimistic. Though it does depend on which type of Gnosticism you're talking about. And I'm tangenting again. I like that word. It's not a real word, but right. Keeping to the role of the female. That doesn't mean everyone being women, by the way. It does mean not excluding and including female energies. It reminds me of the Kundalini rising thing, and of the fact that female energy has been kind of repressed in certain respects for a long time, while the male energy has been wounded, right? Now, I'm not taking some sort of rad femme position here, but I'm not taking a position that's oppositional to that. Now, I think that's important because I see male energies and female energies like a graph, not a graph, you know, like a wave going up and down, or up and down, right? And then another one going up and down, and they're kind of spiraling together in a harmonious way, right? If you were to treat either energy in the society or generally as inferior or beneath the other, or to separate them out rather than harmoniously integrating them, then there's a problem, I would say. And the problem was that that is exactly what happened for such a long time. It's not like men were being really horrible to women all this time. Haven't men been so horrible? Shouldn't men stop being horrible now? Let's try to decondition men from being evil scum. Right? It's more like, to me, in my opinion, it would be more like the disharmonious relations and the wounding of male energies and the excluding of female energies from the collective consciousness and unconsciousness of humanity has, for a long time, led to a disharmonious effects and interactions between men and women and effects of society, right? For example, loads of men going to war, lots of death and suffering. If there's a bit more female energy in how we were governing ourselves, perhaps that wouldn't be so much of a problem, right? And of course, all those men going out to war, they were treated as the cogs in the machine, totally dispensable, totally disposable, right? And interestingly, when you get people like Mugtau, for example, men go their own way or whatever, when they talk about how men have been treated for centuries, thousands of years, and how disposable and how used men have been, they have a point. But at the same time, it's not like men were being used by women, oh, they're manipulating us. It's more like, I mean, men were using men, but it was not even that. The collective conscious and the collective unconscious was using men in that sense, in a disposable way. At the same time, obviously, women are being used too, just in a different way. And we all suffered from that unharmonious, from that lack of harmony and that dualistic separating out of male and female energies. So what really, the mending, the healing of our society doesn't have to do with pointing fingers at one gender or the other, or even saying, oh, one has a systemic advantage than the other over the other. The other gender is the problem. Whether it's saying that the other gender is inherently a problem or that the other gender, sex, whatever, is like conditioned to be that way, or a bit of both. Either way, that's creating more of that dualistic mindset, the ununited, resentful, negative, unloving perspective that created this problem in the first place, right? And so what I'm saying is, we need to, on one hand, here's the thing though, I'm not suggesting throwing like the words of, say, Mugtau radical feminism in the bin. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, let's integrate the wisdom that they do have, as well as the wisdom that both are missing, and integrate it all together into something that's holistic, recognizing the wisdom of everything, but without the shortfalls of what they're all missing. Because when it comes to gender and society and politics and all that stuff, each ideology or perspective or whatever is like a piece in the puzzle. And if you fit them together, the holes are filled in, right? That actually sounds pretty phallic. And if you think about it, puzzle pieces are kind of phallic, but that's not the point. The point is that, or maybe it is, I don't know. But yeah, and and I don't think you can reduce gender dynamics or the resolution of them, the healing of them. I don't think you can reduce it to one extreme or the other. It is the whole polarity and all the ups and downs and spirals and details in between. All, so from one end to the other, and all the other polarities that are involved, bringing them together as a whole, looking at it as an observer in a holistic way. That is how we deal with this, right? So that's why fundamentally, you see, there might be an approach which is say, just take the middle position, completely the middle, whether it's politics or identity politics, gender or whatever. There's one perspective might be like the centrist position, say, which is just take a halfway position, bang, solution. No. You need to have, well, suppose you've got a whole bunch of feet. I know that makes no sense, but suppose you're an octopus and you need to be an octopus with its feet in each of these perspectives to make up and fit them together as a puzzle to make up the whole, right? And also consider octopuses go in water. Think of that water as being the river in the way, right? To be harmonically aligned with the way and the source field frequency, we must integrate all the different separated out aspects of perspective regarding gender, right? And unite them together into a whole that doesn't exclude any of them, but rather, well, integrates it all together in a unified way, in a loving, accepting way. We need forgiveness for that. We need people to forgive themselves and others. We need people to stop. We need people to look in the mirror, that mirror being the external world around them. We need people to do the inner work. But look, we need to do the inner work individually and collectively, right? We need to dare to look inside at what we might not want to look at and accept it, love it, and integrate it, right? Know yourself, accept yourself, love yourself. If we do all this, and each person who does it is leading by example, it makes it easier for other people to do it. Okay? And I didn't expect at all to end up talking about this issue, but it's actually something I've been wanting to talk about for quite a while. And I haven't actually been able to articulate exactly what I have in mind. I haven't been quite able to tease out myself or source or whatever the fuck, to tease out of the way, the source field, something. I haven't been able to get out to communicate exactly what I have in mind, but I feel like this came close, or at least better than I've done so far, because hopefully you like that, because we have to have an accepting and mature conversation about gender and identity without yelling at each other and shit, without separation and division. And yeah, I do see the early signs of healing, though. I do see that, and it takes time. Anyway, so when your discernment penetrates to 4 quarters, at the beginning of this, okay, so where does 4 come from? Everything comes from the 1. That 1 divides into 2. The 2 and the 1 they come from make a 3. and that those two being unified, the unification of opposites makes a 3 as well, right? So there's a 1, and then you got 2, and then the 2 integrate together. That integration of opposites, right? But if you get the starting 1 at the bottom, right, and then they separate out, that's 2. And then you integrate them together, that's 4, right? Like the way I'd represent it is have like on a piece of paper, draw a dot, then draw a diagonal line up right and a diagonal line up left. Make it go more up than it goes to the right or left. And then draw a dot at the end of those. Then bring those lines, then draw 2 more lines up to make them meet again. So you've got this diamond shape, right? Have a line between the left one and the right one. Right. Now, the bottom, think of the bottom one as the one. Oh, I know. Draw a circle around the whole thing. As in, like, connect the bottom circle with the top one, right? Draw a circle around all that. Okay. Now, that kind of creates 5, but let's ignore that. So you've got the starting one, and you've got to separate it out, and then they integrate back again. Or, no, yeah, I'm overcomplicating it. All right, draw a circle with a triangle inside of it, equal sides. Right? 1, 2, 3, 3 sides of a triangle, or so let's say 3 corners. 3 corners of the triangle, right? That's the 3. But where's the 1? The 1's a circle around everything. The Ouroboros, which represents everything, right? There we go. I think that's an occult symbol. I don't know if my interpretation is correct, but I kind of spontaneously came up with it, and well, I can claim that. You don't have to believe me. I don't know. That's kind of pretty cool, isn't it? I like that. I like sacred geometry and shit. It's really cool. So that's where the 4 comes from, but it says 4 quarters. 4 quarters. Squaring the circle. All right, so outside, okay, make it so that that circle, the outer circle, has a square around the edge of it, okay? Now, each area of near the corner of each square, there'll be an area next to, which aligns to on a top right, bottom left, bottom right, top left, right? And there's kind of like this segmenting effect of the whole thing. Or maybe if you put the square in the middle, I don't know. I'm just going on my mind's eye here. I'm not like experienced with this. The point is you can play around with the triangle and a square and a circle, and you can get different symbology representing different things. And you can find a way to represent up to 4 or and beyond in a numerology sense. Okay, and 4 quarters. What do the 4 quarters represent? I don't know exactly, but the four different aspects of oh, I'm completely going in the wrong direction with this. It's way simpler than that. Not that there isn't any value in what I explored there, but okay, get a circle and draw a straight line down and a straight line across. I think it's called the Gnostic cross or something like that. Or is it the... Incidentally, you get this in the hero's journey, you get it in the horoscopes, you get it in the seasons, you get it in many things, right? This segmented circle, the all that is in 4, right? Now, we're used to the idea that all that is in 2. Yin, Yang, kind of a bit more curvy than that, but you know what I mean, right? But 4 is fun, it's very much, it comes up a lot. If you listen to my readings of the Red Book, the quaternary thing is something that does come up a lot. Actually, you tell you what, maybe it will help to bring that up. Where is it? Where is it? I don't know. There it is. Okay. So, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? First of all, well, this isn't what I was intending to show you. This is only if you're watching the video on YouTube. Wait, that's one of them. That has 4 sides in it, but it's got a lot more going on. That's not what I'm looking for. Well, honestly, maybe this isn't what I'm looking for, but 4 does come up a lot. There's the lapis quaternio in Jung's red book. Quaternary structure. Actually, illustration 5, the one I showed you, this one. And I'm not doing a reading of the red book, but I'll read this out because it feels a bit relevant here. The mandala, keep in mind that it's a very basic mandala. A circle with a cross in it, that is actually a mandala. The mandala that Jung designed in 1916, which he considered to be the first mandala, was described, his first mandala was described by some designer as a veritable inner cosmos. Uses a formula that Paracelsus developed where the microcosmos replicates the macrocosmos, and the inner space of an individual is the miniature cosmos equivalent to the outer cosmos. I mean, if you've got a cross and you've got a whole set of circles within each other, you get this law of correspondence effect, which is pretty interesting. So that's something you could add to the feature. Anyway, I didn't really need to get that book out. But the point is, so by the way, tell me if it looks different, if there's a blurring effect. Is there more of a blurring effect than normal? I think I know what might be the reason. And if there is, I can respond to that, and I can adjust things, I think, to make it better. But yeah, okay. So I'm really taking my time with this, aren't I? The 4 quarters. There's 4 stages in the journey, the hero's journey. There's 4 seasons. The beginning, an early growth phase, a sort of maturation phase, a sort of decline phase, and then like the cold phase in a sense, and then there's the repeat, right? Although I would say the dark night of the soul seems linked to the idea of winter. So maybe if you think of it more in terms of the harvest and stuff, maybe it starts with the hero's journey. It might start with autumn, then winter, then spring, and then summer. I don't know exactly. I'm kind of going too far with this, which isn't the way. Yes, so I'll tell you what, I wonder if you've got any ideas about what those penetrating the 4 quarters is, but you don't want to leave out any aspect of the whole. If you've got 4 aspects of the whole and you only got 3 of them involved, there's a problem, there's an imbalance, there's a disharmony. It suggests that there's 2 aspects of, say, order. If you go with the Western idea of chaos and order, and associate those 2 things as one as the black and one as the white in the yin and yang symbol, right? If you were to say there's 2 different types of chaos and 2 different types of order, let's say, creative and destructive, what we get is this 4 thing. And incidentally, earlier in this reading, I was saying I was talking about higher and lower order, higher and lower chaos. That creates a 4. So I already had the 4. I didn't really need to go into that huge elaboration about symbols and mandalas. But you know what? It was fun. I found it fun. I don't know if you did. I hope you did. Tell you what, I'll finish at the end of this number 10. So we're near the end here, actually. When your when your discernment penetrates the 4 quarters, are you capable of not knowing anything? Knowing everything. This isn't talking about a knowledge that's superficial, but it's talking about the infinite accessing and harmonizing with, if you access and harmonize with the infinite war depths of the river of the way, then you access the Akashic records. You can't not access the Akashic records when you're in the way. You're in a dance with Source, and Source is flowing divinity and all its knowledge through you. Which bit of it comes through? Who knows? Who knows? It's the way, after all. It gives them life, yet claims no possession. I mean, Source, or the infinite light that comes into your crown chakra, or what have you, right? That it, yeah, it's not possessive. It's not about control. It's all about letting go, right? Tell you what, if you're seeing it as blurry, as I'm seeing it, like the movement and everything being blurry when I move around and gesticulate, maybe that's actually kind of a cool feature, or maybe it makes you, gives you a headache. I don't know. Anyway, yes, it benefits them, yet exacts no gratitude. It's not like, be grateful for this. I mean, honestly, being gratitude is advisable. It's a very positive and uplifting emotion, I would say. But yeah, it doesn't exact it. It's not like, be grateful. You don't demand gratefulness, and it would never do that. It's loving and providing. All you need to do is align with it, and you benefit from it. It's infinite after all. Why would it hold it back, hold itself back? You're the one who holds yourself back, or you're the one who do not hold yourself back. It depends whether you're in alignment with the way, or the frequency, the source field frequency. So it is the steward, yet exercises no authority, or authority is, after all, an illusion, right? You could say it's part of lower order, perhaps. But stewarding, that's just like taking care of things, right? It's managing stuff. You could even say governing or governance, right? But it's not controlling. It's just simply done harmoniously. Things are taken care of, and you can trust that it will be taken care of. And if you don't trust that it will be taken care of, it won't be, because you won't be in the way. Such is called the mysterious virtue. Now, you could call that mysterious virtue the way, or maybe the mysterious virtue, or all that is, or source, or you might not even refer to it as anything. After all, it is neither, it is both and neither the void and the everything. For is there really a difference? Maybe there is. Maybe there is. I mean, there's certainly some conceptions of God as a negation of anything, and there's certainly other notions of God as everything, right? But wouldn't everything include nothing? right? Literally everything. If there's the infinite of all that is, everything, one of those things would surely be nothing in particular, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't be everything. And therefore, everything and nothing are one. After all polarities, all dualities are ultimately illusions and one, right? So there's a oneness to the way. And fundamentally, if you get an up, down, right? And if you slide them along, one right and one left, you get a circle. And if you get a circle and you make it so that the right side of the circle, if you split it in half, top to bottom, and you make it so that the right side of the circle is moved along so that the left meets where the top of the right is. I don't know if you can mentally see what I'm talking about. Maybe I could draw it. I don't know. Fuck it. I'm near the end here, but I might as well draw this basic thing. First of all, you get this. You can't see shit, can you? Oh, there you go. There you go. That's a circle. Wonderful. Then what you get is if you simply, what's that? Wait, can you see it? There you go. That is the way. It's a wavy line, right? Now, what do you do if you combine the two? Yeah, you can see it. See? Yin Yang. The way, the one. They are one. The infinite nothingness, the nothing infiniteness or something. All right. Hopefully, it wasn't too much all over the place for you. I enjoyed myself. And I guess if I'm enjoying what I'm doing, that's maybe it'll transfer to you guys. So, without further ado, bye for now.